Yeah, share the table.
Where's your table?
Exactly. Well, I mean, military dictatorships are the name of the game, but more stability. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been out there. At least we can go back and do this. The military has been controlling Egypt since '92. I feel like there's never been non-military. They always go.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'd like to invite you to take a seat as we start our program. Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace. I want to start by thanking all of you for being here today. We have around 350 people, which is absolutely amazing. I was having a conversation with someone at my table earlier, and we're very pleasantly surprised at the amount of people here, and especially the young people, the millennials, the millennial generation here. It's very inspiring to see that so many people are passionate about this topic. I also want to call out some special people in the audience. We have Michael Brown-Rigg, who's a two-time Burlingame mayor, council member, and is currently running for state senate on behalf of San Mateo County. We have Sam Hindi, mayor of Foster City. Davina Hurt, mayor of Belmont, who could not make it, but she sends her solidarity. Asim Al-Qarra, who is school board trustee in Sacramento. Sukaina Hussain, who is the CARE Central California director. She came all the way from Fresno. Chesa Budin, who is running for San Francisco District Attorney. Omar Tawakkal, and Raj Mani and his wife, and the children of Stefan Clark. We'd also like to thank the owners of Chandni Restaurant for always supporting us in these causes.
Council member Cheryl Davila from Berkeley. Council member Cheryl Davila from Berkeley City Council.
From Berkeley City Council. We want to give you a special thank you for being here and joining us and supporting us in a very much needed effort to tackle Islamophobia in today's society. After Friday's events, we've become even more aware of the importance of events such as these. This is the Islamophobia Study Center's 5th annual benefit dinner. The goal of the center is to challenge the spread of Islamophobia through education, research, empowerment, and building engaged communities that are working to actualize a more just society. Today we have several incredibly accomplished and influential speakers who are here to share their expertise and knowledge with us. But before we're going to start with a Quran recitation, I'd like to call up Sheikh Muhammad Mujalli. Oh, okay. Filling in for him is Abdullah Ibrahim.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. صدق الله العظيم. O you who believe, seek assistance through patience and prayer. Surely Allah is with the patient. And do not speak of those who are slain in Allah's way as dead. Nay, they are alive, but you do not perceive. And we will most certainly try you with somewhat of fear and hunger and loss of poverty and lives and fruits. And give good news to the patient, who when a misfortune befalls them, say, surely we are Allah's, and to Him we shall return. Those are they whom are blessings and mercies from their Lords, and those are the followers of the right course. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Our first speaker is Dr. Marc Lamont Hill. He's one of the leading intellectual voices in the country. He's currently the host of BET News and a political contributor. An award-winning journalist, Dr. Hill has received numerous prestigious awards from the National Association of Black Journalists, GLAAD, and the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences. Since his days as a youth in Philadelphia, Dr. Hill has been a social justice activist and organizer. He's a founding board member of My Fifth, a nonprofit organization devoted to educating youth about their legal rights and responsibilities. He's also a board member and organizer of the Philadelphia Student Union. Ebony magazine has named him one of America's 100 most influential Black leaders. He trained as an anthropologist of education, Dr. Hill holds a PhD with distinction from the University of Pennsylvania. His research focuses on the intersections between culture, politics, and education in the United States and the Middle East. We're honored to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hill.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It is an honor to be here this evening at such a wonderful event. I am always proud and excited when I am invited to come and speak about issues that matter, issues in politics, issues in culture, current events. So many events are of critical importance at this moment in America, but few issues are as urgent as the issue of Islamophobia. and the issue of racism. And so you all, for the 5th year in a row, convening an event where we can talk about those things and talk about what it means at the ballot box is extraordinary. It's courageous at a moment where there's not a whole lot of courage in politics. But today's event takes on a whole new meaning after the tragedy of the last few days. I was flying and missed the news. I don't watch the news quite as much as I used to. And I was asleep and I woke up and I saw people tweeting, everybody make sure you go to the masjid, make sure the Jummah is attended, well attended, because of everything that's going on. And so I started tweeting or looking on Twitter and looking on Facebook and looking on social media to figure out what had happened. And when I saw that there had been a shooting and I saw that 49 people, 49 mourners, or rather 49 martyrs, were produced in an instant. When I watched the video and I watched people literally welcoming in the assailant, greeting him as brother right before being cut down by an assassin's bullet, when I saw those innocent believers laying on the ground dead, when I saw the parents of children who would never see their babies again, and these babies who would never see their parents again, people who came to observe prayer, to honor one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and to watch them die out of hate, it was overwhelming. I paused for a minute, made dua for those people, shed a few tears, and then tried to figure out what we can do to make sense of such an awful tragedy. And the truth is, you can't make sense of it. It doesn't make no sense. There's nothing sensible about 49 people dying. There's nothing sensible about 49 people being executed in that fashion. And then even more frustrating after you see the 49 deaths is you watch the public response to it. The Muslim community was afraid. Some mourned, some cried. There was talk of people putting together living wills because they were so afraid of what could happen to them just for being Muslim and being outside. This is the world that we occupy right now. So trying to figure all that out against the backdrop of a world filled with hate is something that we shouldn't have to make sense of, because again, it doesn't make no sense. So I watched the media representations and I was shocked and not shocked to watch some of the people on the right. Let's not give this any attention. Let's not name names. Let's not talk about him. Don't give him what he wants. Now, in a vacuum, I'm cool with that. I don't want to celebrate terrorists. I don't want to celebrate shooters. I don't want to celebrate people who cut down lives. I would rather be tweeting and honoring the names of the people who died so that they can die with dignity rather than to elevate the shooter. But what's interesting is we elevate the name of the shooter when the shooter is Muslim. When the shooter's Muslim, they want to tell you everything. Here's his name. Here's the 3rd grade report card. They want you to know everything about him, and then they want every Muslim in the world to denounce this individual person. Imagine that. Imagine if every white person had to denounce Donald Trump. I mean, a whole bunch of them need to based on the last election. But not because they're white, because they voted for him. But Muslims are always forced to defend not just the deen, but also the acts of people who do not operate within the spirit, the doctrine, or the letter of Islam. So I kept digging. And I wanted to understand who this shooter was, because I'm trying to wrap my mind around what kind of person you got to be to walk into a masjid and cut down believers. We see it all the time. Think about Masjid Ibrahim in Khalil, in Hebron. When Baruch Goldstein, and a Brooklynite settler came in and killed believers inside the mosque as they were in sujood, as they were prostrated. The ideology that drove that shooter was white supremacy. He bought into the idea that these Muslims, that these people were outsiders, that they were compromising his ability to thrive in New Zealand. They believed that these people were enemies to freedom and justice for him, that the world, that they were losing their country, and that Muslims were the problem. That sounds familiar. See, the problem is when we deal with these kinds of issues of tragedy, underneath it is an ideology. This isn't about an individual crazy person. This is about a moment in history where we have decided not to turn to each other, but to turn on each other. We have decided to find scapegoats in other people, whether we're scapegoating Mexicans, or we're scapegoating Palestinians, or we're scapegoating Syrians, or we're scapegoating Muslims writ large, or we're scapegoating Somalians, or we're scapegoating poor people. We have decided to scapegoat people rather than to wrestle with the fundamental issues that make the world less just than it could and should be. So, as we talk about Islamophobia, as we talk about racism, we have to be willing to wrestle with the tough stuff. We have to be willing to go deeper than an individual. We have to be willing to go deeper than one story. We have to ask ourselves, how did we arrive at this place? And I think it's interesting that we're linking Islamophobia and racism, because this is important stuff. Because that connection is a key one. We must be willing and able to talk about white supremacy as a doctrine and as an ideology that undermines our ability to accept as Muslim brothers and sisters as human, to recognize black and brown people as human. As long as we have ideologies that promote one over the other, we're going to end up in this place. How do we end up in this place? Well, here in the United States, part of what we have is a world that remains deeply afraid and dismissive of black and brown bodies. We see it in Ferguson, we see it in Oakland, and we see it with the so-called refugee crisis. So until we wrestle with that, we can't get anywhere deeper. So what does that mean for us today? It means as we enter that ballot box, not just this November, next November, when we start thinking about this presidential thing, we have to be willing to do a few things. One, we have to be able to listen deeply. Until we are committed to listening deeply to one another, we cannot enter a space where justice is more expansive. We live in a world where everybody talks but nobody listens. Where people are committed to hearing their voice and articulating their pain and tweeting their thoughts and blogging their ideas and going live on Facebook. There's so much space in the world to tell your story, but what does it mean to listen deeply to the stories of others, to see the humanity of others? Listening is a moral and ethical project. It's a project that says that I must hear the pain of a person who is poor. I must hear the pain of a person who is trans. I must hear the pain of a person who's considered undocumented. I must be willing to listen to them because their voices and their bodies matter. And too often, we only listen to folk if they have something to offer. We only listen to folk if they have money to give us. We only listen to folk if they have a vote that's going to register in an election. And if they're not in a district that matters, the politicians don't even show up. We have to get beyond the idea that people only matter when it's a transactional relationship. They have to matter because as human beings, their very existence is from God. No one is greater among you than anyone else. We must listen. We must also listen because listening is a political project. To listen to one another is to understand that we're better when we're not just locked into arms saying we shall overcome, but we're also locked into circumstance. Think about the great Martin Luther King Jr. His last birthday, he spent listening to sanitation workers and Vietnam War activists and Negro preachers and Chicano activists. His idea was that if we had a coalition of folk that were connected across the board, we would have a stronger front than if everybody was working on their own individual issue. Part of why it's important at this moment in history to link those struggles again is because, again, if you just worried about Islamophobia, but you're not thinking about anti-black racism, if you're thinking about militarism, but you're not thinking about mass incarceration, you don't understand the connectedness of our struggles. There's no way to fight white supremacy. White supremacy is a global project. And the same project of white supremacy that allows people in Fruitvale to be shot down by BART police is the same logic of white supremacy that says that we can't let Somali refugees into this country. And it's the same logic of white supremacy that says that we have to continue to ethnically cleanse Palestine. They're all connected, and we must eliminate all of them. But the trick of white supremacy is to make us think that the victim isn't white supremacy, or the villain isn't white supremacy, it's each other. So I'm worried about the immigrants coming into my neighborhood, and I'm saying the Mexicans are stealing my jobs, and I'm thinking about, I can't worry about the environment because I'm worried about these police, and I ain't got time to think about school reform because I'm worried about these prisons. But the broken schools are leading us into prison. The poverty is leading to more expansive militarism. The militarism and privatization is leading to war and repatriation of resources, meaning that we're going into places and cleaning them out. And the people in the front lines of those wars are the most vulnerable people. So you got poor, vulnerable black and brown people going to places like Yemen, going to places like Somalia, going to places like Afghanistan, and they're going there to wage wars of aggression against other black and brown people who are the victims, as Malcolm X said, of American democracy. We have to be willing to fight as a united front. But that means we got to listen. To listen is also to not just listen to each other, but to also listen to our own words. To listen to our own democratic utterances, our own promises of freedom. If you say we are Muslim, that means that we must listen to Quran, but we must also listen to Sunnah. And Sunnah must not just play out in how we engage on Friday. In the church tradition, they say you gotta be a 7-day Christian. Some folk is just Sunday Christians. They show up on Sunday, they wear nice hats, and then on Monday they act the devil. Can't be Friday Muslims. You can't be Eid Muslims. You can't be not turning my phone on vibrate Muslims. Astaghfirullah. Rather, we must live out these practices. What good is it to say you follow the Sunnah, but you ignore the Prophet's words when he says that race is not a factor in deciding who is above or below you? We can't say that in theory. We can't say that in theory, but in practice anti-black racism. Y'all need to clap on that a little bit more. We can't practice anti-black racism. Don't tell me you're against the occupation, but then you come to the States in black and brown neighborhoods and occupy the hood. Clap for that too. I want y'all to be some self-critical claps. The work of justice demands that we be courageous. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he was speaking about Omar in Tirmidhi, and he says that mercy should be upon him because he spoke the truth, though it may be bitter. The Sunnah calls for us to speak the truth, though it may be bitter. It calls on us to speak out even when it is difficult, especially when it is difficult. We live in a world right now that normalizes Islamophobia so much and normalizes anti-Arab racism so much that so many folk are afraid of what will happen to them. And so we remain silent. I don't know if y'all heard, I had a little problem at work.
This water's Palestinian.
Oh, alhamdulillah. Woo. And what was shocking to me was not that I got fired from CNN for having the audacity to declare that Palestinian lives are worth just as much as Israeli lives. God forbid. What was shocking to me was how many people whispered to me, yo, I agree with you. Half of CNN text me, yo, I've been waiting for somebody to say that. They even whispered, it's a text, they was whispering in the text message, yo. Eyeballs moving and stuff. I'm like, why are we whispering? Because you know you can't say that. Oh, you can say it, but you must be willing to pay a price. Now, please understand, I haven't paid much of a price. Losing a fancy job does not make me extraordinary. It means that I did what I was supposed to do. Don't elevate me. But the point is that we all have a price to pay. And if we are to follow the tradition of justice, that means that you have to be willing to fight and speak the truth, though it may be bitter. It will make you unpopular. There will be times where you will tell the truth and you will lose a friendship. There will be times where you will speak out against anti-black racism and you will lose a loved one. There will be times where you will speak out against Islamophobia and you won't get invited to all the company picnics. There will be a time where you will speak out against Zionism and suddenly a door that was open will now be closed. But you have to be willing to say that I value love and justice and mercy and freedom more than I value these trinkets that the world has to offer. Because if you believe in Islam and you believe in God and any tradition, you understand that there is something bigger and broader and brighter and better than the world could ever offer you, and that is justice. And when you get justice, everything changes. That's why they're fighting so hard to keep it from us. When it's time to vote, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that the votes are suppressed. They're going to do everything that they can to make sure that justice doesn't win. The Republicans win not by talent. They don't win because they got the best argument. Republicans win by the margin of vulnerable people who don't vote. They win by the margin of college students who don't vote. They win by the number of people who feel like the system is so broken it ain't worth voting for. They win by the margin of people who are so fragmented and divided that they vote against their own interests and end up siding with the enemy. And when I say the enemy, let me be clear for all the mukhabarat in the room. There's always a couple. When I say the enemy, I ain't talking about white people. When I say the enemy, I'm not talking about Jewish brothers and sisters. When I say the enemy, I am talking about Donald Trump, specifically. I mean, take that for whatever you want, no extra charge. But I'm talking about people who are enemies to justice and freedom and equality for everybody. We have to show up for each other. We have to stand up for each other. We have to organize for each other. We have to be courageous for each other. It's important for me to say Black Lives Matter, but it's even more important for you all to say Black Lives Matter. assert that Black Lives Matter, you are speaking back to a world that has historically said that black bodies are not worth investing in. People say, well, don't all lives matter? Yeah, all lives matter. No one has ever disputed that all lives matter. The problem ain't that all lives matter. The problem is that the only time people have ever needed to assert that Black Lives Matter are in a world where black lives have been devalued. Nobody devalues white life for being white. Nobody loves white people more than black people. Shit. I'm sorry, you can't do that here. It's true though, look at Kanye. Don't nobody want to be a rich white man more than Kanye. So, again, we believe that all lives have value. But at this junction in history, it is important for each and every one of you to assert that Black Lives Matter. And not buy into a disingenuous argument that suddenly people are concerned that all lives aren't being accounted for. If they really, where were the all lives matter people when Donald Trump said that refugees couldn't come into the country? See, if the all lives matter argument were legitimate when he was banning Somalians and Syrians and Palestinians and Sudanese people from the country, the all lives matter people were like, wait a minute, all lives matter, let them in. But they was quiet. Just like when black folk getting lynched from trees, there were no people, hey, come down, all lives matter. During slavery, nobody said, wait a minute, the slavery thing can't work because all lives matter. When masjids are getting burned down, nobody said, wait a minute, New Zealand, all lives matter. Yes, all lives matter, but at this moment in history, Muslim lives are on the line, black and brown lives are on the line, black lives are on the line, and all of us must put a coalition together in 2020 to say, never again. And we must also put a coalition, listen, we must also put a coalition together to protect people who are willing to speak the truth like Ilhan Omar. It cannot be a crime to say that there is a lobby that defends the interests of Israel. Yes, anything that, when you start linking Jewish people to money or saying that they're dishonest or obsessed with money or sneaky or poisoning water wells or all these other anti-Semitic tropes, they are ugly, vicious tropes that we reject wholeheartedly. I do not want to be a part of any mission, any coalition, any organization, any faith, any community that is anti-Semitic in any way, form, or fashion. We denounce anti-Semitism wholeheartedly. At the same time that we reject anti-Semitism wholeheartedly, I would not disrespect the Jewish tradition by equating the violence of settler colonialism and the violence of Israel or the vicious statecraft of Netanyahu with the beautiful Jewish tradition. That's not about Judaism, that's about Zionism, and Zionism is not Judaism. We have to be willing to make that distinction. And we have to be courageous enough to make that distinction out loud and wrap our arms around people like Rashid Tlaib or Ilhan Omar or anybody else willing to speak the truth. There's a gun lobby. There's the people that want you to think gun rights means the right to have any gun, anytime, any place, without limitations. There's a lobby. There's a lobby of people who don't believe in climate change, starting with your president, who tweets dumb 70 degrees in winter. That means the Earth's not getting hot. There's no climate change. What are you talking about? Global warming. Oh, it's cold. It's -10. There can't be climate change. Do you own a book? This stuff is Googleable. But there's a lobby. There's a school privatization lobby. And yes, there is a lobby that is committed to protecting the political interests of Israel. That doesn't make it a secret Jewish conspiracy. That would be anti-Semitic, and we reject anti-Semitism. But we should be able to say that there is a lobby that protects the interests of the state of Israel, which are in line with the interests of the United States. We have to be willing to say that they're not in line with the interests of justice. But if every time someone speaks out, we get afraid, or we only think about what we have to lose, then we'll never get anywhere far. I'm gonna leave you alone, but I think about Again, the great Martin King on April 3rd, 1968, when he was giving his speech. And he began to talk about Jericho Road. Anyone who's ever been on Jericho Road, as Dr. King said, knows it's a winding, meandering road. It's conducive to ambushing. He talked about what it meant for that man to fall onto Jericho Road. And he talked about the people who would go by to help him. He said some people would just ride on by. Other people would be compassionate by proxy. They might send somebody to help. He said, but the good man, the good Samaritan, was the one who stopped to help him. He said, the good person is not the person who says, what will happen to me if I stop? He said, the great man is the one that will say, what will happen to him if I don't? That is the question that we face right now. What will happen to the vulnerable if we continue to do nothing? We are here at a nice fancy restaurant eating delicious food, but what will happen to people in Yemen right now? What will happen to women in Saudi Arabia right now? What will happen to people in Darfur right now? What will happen to people on the south side of Chicago right now? What will happen to the vulnerable among us if we continue to do nothing? We know the answer to that. And so our faith, our tradition, our love of justice propels us and compels us to do something different. Today, let us all commit to standing up, to organizing, to connecting across difference, to loving each other into a new sense of promise and possibility, and to committing to eliminating Islamophobia and racism in this country and around the world. And if we do that, we will honor the faith of our parents. We will honor the tradition of Islam. And we will finally get the world that we so definitely deserve. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That was inspirational and moving and funny and sad all at the same time. Next up, we have Dr. Hatem Bazian with the Center's yearly fundraising goals. In spring of 2009, Professor... Okay, well, he has a very long intro that I would love to give, but let's get it.
Assalamu alaikum. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. First, thank you, Mark, for getting us on the road for working for justice. I'm tasked today with just giving you the 5 key areas of work for the Islamophobia Center and our fundraising goals to understand what type of work and project that we have been undertaking. So, the center has a number of ongoing projects, publications and data collection. We have the Islamophobia Studies journal. It's the only peer-reviewed journal in the world on Islamophobia. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is an oxymoronic term because they do not cooperate. They have a massive budget on Islamophobia, yet they have not a single publication of repute on Islamophobia. So literally, the only academic publication on the subject of Islamophobia in the world, without exception, is the one that we actually publish ourselves. If you came in, we have the Islamophobia reporting app. So if you have an iPhone, or an Android, you go and download the Islamophobia reporting app. And this is very critical because the FBI data on hate crime toward Muslims only represent a very thin representation of what takes place. We say that data drives policy. If you don't report it, it didn't happen. So the app is very important and critical for all of us to actually report the data, and the collection of data will have a monthly report that goes out to policymakers. And if a case that needs legal follow-up, We're partnered with CARE, so anything that needs legal follow-up, we'll send it to CARE office, whether it's San Jose or anywhere nationally, or Asian Law Caucus or some of the other civil rights organizations. Third, we do publish annual accounting of Islamophobia nationally. It's a joint report with CARE. And then we have academic writings, fact sheets, book chapters and articles, as well as a bibliography. So we have actually the only set of bibliography on Islamophobia anywhere in the world. So you actually, if you want to start your research on the subject of Islamophobia, the bibliography that we have would actually cut much of your work. It is annotated and it gives you actually the scope of the field. And we have a partner organization that publishes in German. One of our colleagues who's an affiliate faculty publishes the German Islamophobia bibliography, and we're working on developing one in French. So literally, the field of Islamophobia, if you have a bibliography, that actually begins to ground the work. Policy-oriented research. Now, literally yesterday, we just finished the first of its kind Islamophobia in India. This is just the copy from the copy machine. It's going to be released on April 2nd. Literally, this is the first ever report on the status of Islamophobia in India. I traveled to India, to south of India, Kerala. We met with people in there. We also had workshops on decolonial studies, because the PGP party and the right wing says that Muslims are the colonial powers in India. So again, this is the first of its kind report. We also have Islamophobia and public health. And the Countering Islamophobia in Education is focused on K through 12. I know that Amina here is waiting for the report to be finished. I have not had the time to actually sit down and read it and offer. And that's my next step, is actually finishing this report, so we'll get it out. We have another report that likewise both Omar and Paula are working on, Gamistan report, which is Islamophobia in computer games. And many of us who actually watch, it's so much filled with Orientalist topography, so you would actually think, why would somebody begin to have latent Islamophobia in their mind, because they're sitting in front of the computer 4 or 5 hours and they're watching a whole scenery that's almost Alibaba. So when you go to the Arab world and the Muslim world, you begin to actualize this. So this report, we're hoping to be out in May. The writing and the research is being done. And lastly, the British Parliament, the Canadian Parliament, actually adopted, one of our colleagues that work as an affiliate faculty developed the definition that was adopted by the British Parliament, where Islamophobia is a type of racism. It's a major, major development in this, because you already have a mechanism. We have close to 20 plus different definitions, and that's fine, but it's important once the definition is linked to racism, you have a structure within the state apparatus of how to deal with racism, so you don't have to reconfigure the structure from the ground up. So this is an important development just in the field. Conferences and events. We have a UC Berkeley Anchor Global Conference on Islamophobia, the largest gathering annually on the field of Islamophobia. We get usually about 40 different papers. This year is the 10th annual conference from April 15th to the 21st. So literally from scholars from Singapore, from Russia, from India, Pakistan, from most of Europe, Canada, and the United States. So it's very important. You need to produce the literature, otherwise your narrative and your story is not out there. We have another anchor conference in Paris to deal with the European. That usually takes place in December. Conference also in Turkey with the CIGA. And then partnership in 6 other conferences, including a conference in the German-speaking world that rotate between Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Now, for those who don't know, Austria actually has a political party that is originated from a neo-Nazi background, and they're the ruling party. So you have to deal with the dynamics, and each country have a different particular notions to it. And then monthly events at UC Berkeley. For shaping Islamophobia studies field. Now, I don't like to boast, but literally, Berkeley is the hub of the Islamophobia studies field. You cannot engage in Islamophobia without actually going through our work at Berkeley. Recently we had 2 books that just came out, Islamophobia and Psychiatry. So the second chapter on the Framing the field, it's my chapter just to frame how the field of Islamophobia. So even in psychiatry, we had to put a piece in there. Islamophobia in Muslim majority state societies, the second chapter in the book is my chapter to frame the field. So made birthing into the hub for the Islamophobia studies field. And I'm not expressing any thanks to the administration because it's without their help that this was possible. We also have regularly hosting visiting faculty. So this year our faculty that will be coming as a visiting faculty is from Singapore, and they do work both in Singapore, in Malaysia, as well as in India. So they have a major center in there, so they're the visiting scholars. Also we host graduate student researchers. This year we have Aisha from France. She's a graduate student from France. She's our visiting scholar, does her research, and also her husband is a visiting scholar for the sociology department, not directly with us, but their work is very critical, and that's how you begin to actually look at the field, expanding the field of Islamophobia. And literally this past week, as the incidents in New Zealand took place, and my wife could testify, I received an email from 2 students who were visiting students from the UK. They were just coming, they were visiting students. They took my class upon the recommendation of Stephen Small from African American Studies, and I think we have the chair of African American Studies, Nikki, in here with Michael from African American Studies. They sent an email. They said that we came to your class, we took the Deconstructing Islamophobia class, and when we came back to the UK, we actually decided to write our thesis on Islamophobia. So he wrote on his thesis on Islamophobia, and his friend Harry, who also took, he said, from the first lecture, we decided to make sure that our thesis will be on Islamophobia. So both theses came out as a result of being in the classroom. So this is the impact of actually engaging in this. Partnership with academic and community organizations, established Islamophobia Studies Consortium, forthcoming International Islamophobia Studies Association. We actually have been meeting. I went to Toronto, and we have created a International Islamophobia Studies Association with 3 of us, Berkeley, Leeds University in the UK, and Toronto University. And we have applying for a major grant from the Canadian government. We don't expect to get anything from the US government other than CVE money, but we're not going to take any of that. So again, this is the international association that will focus on getting scholars. We already have about 200 scholars connected to this work, which is very critical and important to make the Islamophobia as a professional academic enterprise, and this is taking place as we speak. Capacity building, train students and researchers on engaging the field of Islamophobia, summer courses and projects. One of our projects, actually, we took our students to France as the major crisis of immigration took place. We took them to the Eurotunnel to actually visit in the camps where the refugees were there, refugees from across the world. And usually they try to use Islamophobia as a way to hide the history, because many of the immigrants and refugees in France and the UK are from their ex-colonies. They are there because you were there, it's not the other way around. But they try to use Islamophobia and make you scared so you don't address the history, the legacy that actually opened that pipeline. So it's been very important to take the students so they actually witness and see exactly what is taking place. You can't intervene in Iraq or Syria or Palestine or Somalia or Yemen or Iraq or Afghanistan and not to expect the refugees that are consequences of your intervention. You want to play big politics, but you don't want to deal with the consequences of the big politics that you actually are engaged in. So this is very important for us to reshape the discussion around both colonialism, settler colonialism, post-Cold War, and how these interventions lead to this. Connect Islamophobia to immigration crisis and foreign policy. So this is the work that we are undertaking. Syllabus and course development in order to assist faculty across the country and other places to actually develop courses that will address the particular needs that are rising both for Muslims as well as others. Funds for this year will be used for the following areas: to continue the publication and data collection. So we're going to print and publish this. Every congressional office will get a copy of the India report. Every Senate office will get a copy. Everybody in the State Department as well as Sacramento, so you can't say, I don't know. So next time you welcome Moody here in Silicon Valley and think that he's next thing to cheesecake, you'll understand you're shaking hands with somebody that has committed genocide in Gujarat, and you can't let him go off the hook. Unfortunately, some of our Muslims welcome them as well because they think that cultural understanding can also extend to shaking hands with individuals that have blood on their hand. That has to end, and we need to make sure that systematic research can make that happen. Policy-oriented research will continue. We have four tracks research that are undertaking. Conferences and events will continue to take place, shaping the Islamophobia field. Capacity building, expanding staff. Literally, we have one paid staff person and 3 contractors would bring them in contract. Now you could say, why we produce so much? Because it's a labor of love. Right? It's not a labor of just somebody sitting and thinking that I'm going to contemplate big ideas without actually producing. This is applied research for social justice. It's not applied research for a vacation. Right? And we need to understand that difference where you could actually make an impact. We're moving into a sustainability model. Whatever we raise, we're going to set aside 15% toward the endowment. So in a few years, we will be self-sustaining to maintain this work for the foreseeable future. And we encourage you, again, to invest in the work. So if you are interested in investing in an endowment, please speak to me to try to make this endowment for the foreseeable future. If you're around in the Bay Area, make sure to attend our 10th annual conference, which is Virtual Internment, Islamophobia, Surveillance, and the Unequal Citizenship. Now, I don't know how many of you actually have read the New Yorker article. You read the New Yorker article where you had a private Mossad company that spied in me in Berkeley and in the campus, and so far till today I have not received a phone call, an email, or a question from the administration to say, how are you, how is the Mossad, did they treat you well, right? What can we do? Nothing whatsoever. Can you imagine a private intelligence organization that spent $2.5 million to spy on anyone, and there is silence both in the city of Berkeley and in the university? That tells you also where the intersectionality of silencing, right, that takes place, including the city that up to the most recent past was engaged in Urban Shield, which is a training program on counterterrorism that brought the Israeli security police, the Malaysian security police, the Bahraini, the Jordanian and others, and much of what is being framed was also heavily Islamophobic. So again, this work in terms of how to begin to undo the surveillance apparatus is very critical. The conference is open and it will be live streamed, so we encourage all of you to participate. For those locally in the Bay Area, on Tuesday there will be a gathering at UC Berkeley to really remember and to center the suffering and the consequences of what took place in New Zealand. It's at 6 p.m. in Sprout Plaza, and it's also sponsored by the Northern California Islamic Council as well as the IRDB. So again, we encourage you to support this work. I compare it to the following. Relief effort, you're just actually addressing the ambulance after the effect. If you're building a hospital, it's already the crisis in there. If you have a health department, that begins to actually work on prevention. So our work is about prevention for the long term, and we're placing the work within the racial understanding. So we're not actually thinking about how to make Muslims look good. That's not our business. Right? It's a rogue methodology. Islamophobia has to be understood within the racial structure and a long history and a long durée of racialization, both of Muslim bodies and black and brown bodies and spaces. So you have to go to 1492 in order to bring it forward, rather than to think we just want to make Muslims look good. Humanizing the human is a dehumanizing act. You never should try to dehumanize yourself, because God himself humanized you from the moment of birth. You should not engage in a whole humanizing discourse. That's very critical. That's where our work is grounded in this. So now I'm going to bring Imam Zaid, who's going to help us. It's called fundraising. I know it's fundraising. Fundraising. You came in here to support this effort, so Imam Zaid is going to help us in the fundraising portion of this discussion. Assalamu alaikum.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we're so blessed that everyone is coming here. We thank our brother Marc Lamont for that moving address and for taking time to come here. And the other guests, it's kind of difficult to fundraise in light of the circumstances. We do our best. I think it's very important for us to just reiterate the main theme of the night, the theme of unity. We're all in this together. You know, when we talk about tropes, there's a very popular trope circulating in some circles. It goes like this: not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. You hear that one? Of course, it was never true, but there's no time, I don't think, in recent history that the point that it is not true has been emphasized the way it's been emphasized over the course of these last few days. Brothers and sisters, let us send our condolences to the families of all those who have lost their loved ones when the mosque was shot up, or the masjids, or mosques, plural, were shot up in New Zealand. But let us also, if we haven't already, send our condolences to the families, the Jewish families whose loved ones lost their lives in Pittsburgh, or to the Sikh families who lost their lives when the Sikh temple was shot up outside of Milwaukee, or to the Christian families who lost their loved ones when the church was shot up in Texas. Let us send our condolences to the family of Stefan Clark. Some of them are here tonight, and the family of Oscar Grant, and the family of all of those young people, male and female, who have lost their lives. To the police, let's send our condolences to the families of those who have lost whose children have lost their lives at the hands of people in their neighborhoods. Let us send our lives to everyone who is grieving because of an unnecessary death that's been facilitated in greater or lesser extent because of our not fully appreciating and internalizing the fact that we are all the honored servants of God. If Muslims at this juncture, if we can contribute anything to the public discourse, and now is the time for us to come forward, not to be the voice, but to be a voice, to provide emphasis for those who are already raising their voice, to punctuate their sentences, that we are taught that as human beings we share a basic dignity and honor conferred upon us by our Creator, that when we read in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, we have ennobled the human being. And that ennobling precedes religion, it precedes creed, it precedes ethnicity, it precedes race. It is based on our sharing the stuff that makes all of us human. If we can share one verse of the Quran before we begin to encourage you to give, it will be the following verse, where our Lord says to us, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَىٰ وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِندَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلِيمٌ خَبِيرٌ. O humankind. So all of us are addressed, not يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَيُّهَا الْمُسْلِمُونَ, you Muslims, you believers, humanity at large. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَىٰ, we've made you all from a single pair, a male and female. We call Adam and Eve, Adam wa Hawa. The geneticists, they have a scientific name for them. But we are all from a single parentage that's been scientifically proven, meaning we're all brothers and sisters. We are all members of the same family. And the first thing racists like that, racist in New Orleans, or New Zealand rather, and there's some in New Orleans also, they were at the bridge during Katrina. They say, no, there are different origins. There are superior people and inferior people. These inferior people, some of them are direct descendants of monkeys. In their literature, they'll have African-looking people with tails appendage to their bodies. And not to be undone, there are some people who might be black racists. And they'll say the white man has a different origin. The white man was grafted by Dr. Yaqub, the big-head black scientist on the island of Patmos over the course of 10,000 years. And I'm not saying that to denigrate the effort and the history of the Nation of Islam, because my wife was in it. She never believed that nonsense. She was in it for the solidarity and to get some work done. I'm sure a lot of other people were. But some people put forth those types of doctrine. Our Lord tells us all of humanity are from a single parentage. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all in this together. No matter who we are or where we hail from, we are all in this together, and we need to act like we're in this together. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا. And there are differences. We made you into nations and tribes. There are different nations and tribes. Muslims, we acknowledge that. And Adhan al-Habasha, the Adhan is for the Ethiopians. And Hikmatu, Yamaniya, wal Iman Yamani. Wisdom and faith are Yemeni. وَإِن تَتَوَلَّوْا يَسْتَبْدِلْ قَوْمًا غَيْرَكُمْ ثُمَّ لَا تَكُونُوا أَمْثَالَكُمْ. If you turn back, Allah will bring someone, they won't be like you. And he put his hand on the shoulder of Salman al-Farisi, Salman the Persian, and he said, him and his people. Huwa wa qawmuhu. There are distinctions, but we all are marching in the same army. There might be different battalions and different divisions, but we're all marching in the same army. The army of justice, the army of fairness, the army of... We're all marching in the same army. And we have work to do. And the Islamic Center, so just to finish the verse very quickly. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The most virtuous you, honored of you, noble of you with God is the one most God-fearing. So the significance of that is that distinctions amongst humans have been removed from physical distinctions or characteristics. The most honored of you isn't the blackest or the whitest, the tallest or the shortest. The one with this type of hair, that type of hair, this type of eye color, that type of eye color. The most noble is the one who is the most pleasing to God. Pleasing to God because of their character, because of the depth of their faith, because of the magnanimity of their service to their fellow human being. That is the best, and good deeds have no color. Brothers and sisters, we have work to do, and the work that we've gathered here tonight to support is the work of fighting Islamophobia. As it was stated, this is a scourge. This is a scourge that has been allowed to exist because some people deemed it to be in their interest to allow it to exist. You know the reasons. And those are some of the unspoken truths about this Islamophobic situation. The bottom line is this, though. You cannot openly call for the death of Jews in this country openly and expect to have a long political life. You cannot openly get on the radio, on television, and say, we need to kill all the niggers. Yeah, I said it. And expect to have a long political life. You cannot get on the radio and say, you know what, we need to exterminate the scourge of homosexuality and expect to have a long political life. But you can get on the radio, you can go on for hours about how we need to kill all the Muslims. You can be a respected academic like Sam Harris, and you can put in your book, The End of Faith, that the problem is the Muslim and we may need to kill a few million of them and be honored by Stanford University. This center is working to change that reality. And that's why we need to support it. That's why we need to support it. So I know there are people with deep pockets. I thought I was going to do this after Maghrib. I heard Dr. Hatem say I need to raise some fund. I was getting ready to raise some tea. Some of you have deep pockets. My pockets aren't deep. Like, this is not a tailored suit. I won't tell you where I got it from. They didn't like make the pockets deep, but some of you can afford tailored suits. And you have deep pockets. And I want you to dig into those deep pockets, not for me. I'm not getting a penny out of this. If they try to give me an honorarium, I'm going to give it back. It's not for me. It's for those people in that masjid in New Zealand who could have been any masjid on the face of this earth. Right? This guy traveled all over the world. That's interesting in and of itself. He went to Pakistan. He went here, he went there. He could have come to America with his devious thoughts. He would have had no problem getting the guns in America. All right? It could have been any masjid. It's for the people, those children that died, those women that died, those elders that died, those dignified, innocent people that died. It's for those people in that synagogue and the people in the church. Because if we can stop this scourge, that scourge, those scourges will follow. Because as it was stated, they're all interrelated. They're all manifestations of a disease that emerges from the same virus. And if we can stop it against Muslims, we'll stop it against everybody. It's for all of the innocent people on the face of this earth who deserve to live dignified lives and to come to their natural term and not to have their lives prematurely ended because of hatred. So we want someone to dig into your deep pockets and say, I will give $50,000 for this work. And do it right now because we have to pray. So raise your hand. Again, it's not for me. It's for this work. It's for this systematic work. It's for this academic work. It's for this translating incidents and facts and data into policy. That's what it's for. So where are you at? He or she of the deep pockets. I know someone here can do that. And if you can't do it now, in light of the circumstance, when will you ever do it? So one person, Bismillah, just do it. Get on the Nike plan. Just do it. Don't think about it. When you go home, you'll feel good. Seriously. One person. I got 5 seconds to get this person. 5. When I get to 0, you raise your hand, like reflex. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bismillah. Anyone see that hand? Nobody. 30,000. $30,000 for the work of Islamophobia. combating Islamophobia. That's a check. That's a serious check. That's a check for $30,000. Takbir. That's not a pledge card. But I believe you do have pledge cards at your table, so start filling those out now. So does anyone want to match that? Someone want to match that? If you could do it in installments. You don't have to do it all at once. Very quickly, we have 5 minutes to get at least $200,000. You're off to a good start. Anyone like to match that? $30,000. Anyone like to match this? One person. All right, $20,000. $20,000. It's one person. There are probably 5 people in here that can do that. Brothers and sisters, this is our future. If we don't get ahead of this, the future might be perilous for some people. So this is serious business. It's serious business, brothers and sisters. 20,000. It's one person. You won't ask for a match? Oh, right here. Allahu Akbar. Right here. This person, may you all be increased ilman wa amalan rizqan halala, in beneficial knowledge, righteous deeds, and lawful income. So you can continue to give. We said we wouldn't ask for a match. 15,000. 15,000, very quickly. Again, I know someone can easily do that. And you can't take it with you when you go. And one thing we see from this tragedy, none of us knows when we're going to depart this earth. When those people went into those masjids, they didn't know they weren't coming out. And I don't say that callously, but that's just a fact and reality of our lives. None of us know when the term that's been set for our lives will expire. And we do know we can't take the wealth with us when we go. So one person, please, for the sake of this project, $15,000. $15,000, one person. I know someone can do that. 15,000. Bismillah. We don't have much time, so I won't belabor the point. You can do it later, though. 10,000. We should have at least 3 or 4 or 5 people for $10,000. $10,000 to fight Islamophobia, to fight for the future of our community, to fight for the dignity of Muslims all over the world, because as it was so articulately stated, there's a connection between the bombs raining down on the heads of Muslim people and others in all corners of the world, and a connection between this masjid shooting, or connection between those politicians who say we should nuke Mecca if there's another terrorist attack, and they say it openly. They're connected together. We see Hungarian racists with connections to these European movements that are fomenting Islamophobic hate in Europe, brought into the White House. There's a connection. And so this is a global struggle. And your contribution helps us to push this struggle forward. How much money are the people spending to promulgate and propagate Islamophobia? How much have they spent? $250 million? $250 million? So we need money. We need resources to fight this scourge. So $10,000 rather. Just one, the first one, for $10,000 to help Dr. Hatem and to help his team, who put out 4 or 5 journals by now, who've hosted conferences of internationally recognized and renowned scholars, who've done so much work. One right here. Thank you, my brother. May Allah Ta'ala increase you. Almighty God increase you in beneficial knowledge, righteous deeds, and lawful income. Who wants to join this gentleman? Who wants to join him? One is not enough. They used to say you could eat one, no, you say you couldn't eat one Lay's potato chip. No one could eat just one. So no one can settle for just one fine, dedicated, sincere person giving 10,000. We need 3 or 4. Make believe you're a Lay's potato chip and raise your hand to help this project. As I said, this isn't for me. This is for this work. This is for this work. This is for this groundbreaking center. This is for this unprecedented work that this Bay Area community has helped to give birth to. And so now we need you to come forth and to stand up to support it so it can expand its work as the threat expands. So we need 2 more. 2 more. 1 more. Thank you. Behind door number 1. Oh wait, that's the wrong program. Another for $25,000. Takbir. Takbir. Say it like you're not on an airplane. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. We have another anonymous donation for $20,000. Allahu Akbar. You know, this anonymous family is amazing. Abu Bakr anonymous, Fatima anonymous. There's some, all over the country they give. All right, there are 2 people walking around you can give your donations to. We need 1 more for 10,000. Like 25,000 doesn't count. That's not 10. No, seriously. We have. All right, we'll settle for 1. Yeah, we'll count the 25 and the 15 or whatever that was. 5,000. This is the sweet spot. Now we need 5 for 5,000. That's like your latte budget. Now they got the food. They got the what is it? The ground up, the matcha. That's your matcha budget. So just give up your matcha for a year and give $5,000 to the Islamophobia Research Project, and you're straight. So we need 5. Where's number 1 for 5,000? Right here. That's 1. Where's number 2? Number 2. Right there. Number 2 for 5. That's a serious table over there. Let me go over there. Personal solicitation. We need 3 more. Y'all aren't off the hook. Starting to loosen up. That's when they don't think. They just write the check. We need 3 more for 5,000. Seriously. Again, for this work, 3 more. We said 5. That's 2. That's 2. 3 more for 5,000. All right. Think about it. Think about it. Think hard. Long and hard about it. And once you make up your mind, there are volunteers walking around. Dr. Hatem, where's the table with the people? Is that the table? Sister, you're the table. Oh, the table's over there. The brother over there, next to the journal posters on the wall, banners, that brother. So when you make up your mind, I'm going to do this 10,000, go see that brother all the way over there. 1,000, because we have to pray Maghrib. So we're gonna do 1,000. We should get a whole lot for 1,000. That's the latte budget. We did the matcha. So we're gonna start in this area. How many? 1,000 for this part. 1, 2, 3. Volunteers, get over there. Stay in this area so the volunteers can get you. We need some more over here. $1,000. Probably everyone in the room can do that. $1,000. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, this part, this corner. 5. Where's number 6? Over here, you guys. 6. Number 7. Number 7. That is 7? Oh, 7 right there. Alhamdulillah, we should get at least 25. So there's 7. Let's go. Right here. Number 8, right here. Number 9. Where's number 9? Number 9. Let's get one from this table for 1,000. Just one of you guys. 50,000? I like that. You love Palestine. So we think it's serious. You love Palestine, it's Islamophobia, 50,000. We're getting ready to send the big brothers over there. They like grab people by the ankle. So we got one from this table? No. You guys all collectively do 1,000. That's 100 apiece. Is there 10 of you? I'm mathematically challenged. I hope there ain't 9 of you guys. That's $80-something. Okay, right here in this sector, how many we got for $1,000? We got one right here. Allahu Akbar. Number 2 for 1,000. This whole row. All of you guys. Where's number 2? Number 2. Wait, no, actually that's number 8, 9. That's number 9. What we have here? She's smiling. It must be something good. It is. No wonder she's smiling. $10,000. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Barakallahu feekum. Zadakumullahu ilman wa amalan rizqan halala. How much is this? Was this with that? Oh, it's together. So I should put this check in this envelope. You guys do as I do. Everyone write a check. Put it in an envelope. Put it in an envelope. Okay. All right, this section right here. Let's get, so we got 9. Come on, 10, 11, 12. We need 3 from this section. 10, 11, 12. Raise your hands. Come on. That's 10, 11, and 12. Then we'll leave you guys alone. All the way back, way in the back. One of you guys can do $1,000. No one's taking an Uber home. I know it. Now you guys think about it. Over in here. So we got 10, 11, 12. No, we got 10. We need 11. You guys, over here. 11, 12. Where's 13? 13. Where's 14? We're almost there. 11. Now listen. We'll go to 20 and we'll call it a night. We got to pray. So where were we at? 14. 14. All right, where's 15? 15. Allahu Akbar. This table is 16. 16. Allahu Akbar. Do 17. 17. That's what I'm talking about. Brother. All right, 18, 19, 20. Halas. You guys, this side of the room, all you got to do is 3. You guys got off the hook. 18, 19, 20. Oh, we're on a roll. Let's go for the 25. We're that close. Be right there. Come on. Let's go back over here. Let's go back to that table over there. All right, this is how we're going to do the 20. We're going to do it by 500. That means 10. We're going to get 10 brothers and 10 sisters for 500 each. And that will make $5,000, and that will make $25,000. And then we go pray. All right, we want ladies first. First sister anywhere for 500. Right there. That's one. Brothers, you got to match that. This is a game. It's called match that sister. All right, brother, we need a brother for 500. Right there. Okay. Thank you, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar. And if you're a politician, I forgot the introduction. You're a true politician, interested in the common good. All right, sister, you got to go ahead. Brothers, 1, sisters, 1. All right, where's the, we need a sister to break the tie. Right there, 500. Allahu Akbar, brothers. We got to tie it up again. Where's my brother? Representing for the brothers. What's wrong, brothers? Raise your hand for $500. All right, listen, we'll go right here. All right, 2 to 2. Sisters. Sisters, you got to break the tie. We need a sister for $500. Right here, Allahu Akbar. You gave twice. Allahu Akbar. Nothing wrong with that. Your sister's so nice, she gave twice. All right? Brothers, break the tie. We need the tie-breaking brother. Where you at, brothers? See, now they're not rijal qawamun ala nisa. Yallah. Brothers, tie it up. Where you at? Brothers. All right, sisters, forget this. Sisters, let's go to 5. Sister number 4. Sister number 4. She's right there. Sister number 5. Over there, right there. Sister number 5. All right, brothers, you think about it while you're praying. Because we got to pray. It's like Maghrib inching towards Isha. Listen, we want one thing. How many of you have a pledge card, an envelope, pledge envelope on your table? Raise your hand. Oh, what's that? A brother? Then 500. Allahu Akbar. That's the spirit. We need 2 more brothers. Then it's a tie. It's all over. It's a tie. Everyone's happy. We need 2 more brothers for $500. Where's he at? Right there. Number 4. Where's number 5? Brother number 5. Brother number 5. He's right there? He's right there? All right. Then the brother back there makes 6. That means we need 1 more sister before we go. I mean, I'm just saying, the brother raised his hand. While he raised his hand, they were both number 5. So that means 1 was 5 and 1 was 6. 1 more, we need a sister to break it, to tie it up again, and we're done. So sister, right there. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah. Hey, you gave 3 times. That's cool though, because Allah loves the eye. Alhamdulillah. 3 is out. Allahu Akbar. Listen, you guys have been wonderful, but we want everyone to take that envelope and fill something out. Listen, if it's $1, if you have $1, we could put in that envelope, put it in there. Because we don't know where the blessing is. That $1 can be seed money. And our Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, "Al-hasanatu bi-ashri amthaliha." The good deeds are multiplied 10 times over. Ila 700 times over. Ila adafan kathira. 7 million. That $1 can have the blessing of $7 million, and that's what blesses this center, in addition to what everyone is given to become a powerful force in this world. Because institutionalized strength can only be countered by institutionalized strength. We can have, look at all the dysfunction in the Muslim world, parts of the Muslim world. Generalizations, categorical statements are rarely true in many parts of the Muslim world. But you have strong individuals. You have individuals, they don't smoke, they don't drink, they know 5 languages. Well, you know Muslims like that. They got a PhD, an MD, and a BA. But that talented, strong, sober individual in the context of a weak institution, the weakness of the institution neutralizes the strength of the individual. And you might have an individual that does all of that. They drink, they smoke, they gamble, they got a 3rd grade education, but they're working in the context of a strong institution, and the strength of the institution neutralizes the weakness of the individual. Stop thinking about our president. I saw it. I just saw it. I saw it. So we want this to be a strong institution, brothers and sisters. We want this to be a renowned institution, a world-recognized, world-class. It's already world-class, but world-renowned institution that grows, that is strengthened because of your support, your well wishes, your love, and your prayers. So I want everyone to give something. $1, $2, 50 cents. Give something. Can we all do that? Something. So Dr. Hatem should go home tonight with a stack of envelopes like that. Right? Look how many people in here. If everyone did something, that envelope should be like that. And the $50,000 person, don't think you're off the hook. Because I saw your suit pockets. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Trying my
I think they only work for checks. It's just it's even, yeah. No spaces.
Make sure to invite me. I shall. No, tell me with one I shall. We need those. We need some. Inshallah. Thank you.
More people that want to, because everybody's so tired with their family, schools and work, just to do it, so you can't focus. I knew you were now. Look at that. Shining. We were up in the room, in the back of the room here. Oh, okay. What else did you want? Oh, okay. So we'll be back in. That way.
Good, yeah. Nice to program they're admitting it. They're admitting it. They're saying we're just they have to do what we're yeah, I like it because it's not red. Like, that's what we went together.
Yeah, I just see that. It's just like it's such a
When Dr. Bazian.
Sorry guys, it doesn't come to the main hall. They'll see you through it.
Which is really good.
Hi, good to see you. How are you? No, actually, how are you? Yusuf, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Abdurrahman. Is this? My name is Abdurrahman. You have an amazing mom. Amazing. Like capital A-M-A-Z-I-N-G. All of them capital. You guys give her a hard time. No, man, no. She's incredible. She's incredible. Incredible. You guys are very welcome. No, I don't. 100%. I don't. How are you? How are you doing? Yeah? Everything's good? Good. No, so you're, okay, so he's the one that, what do you study? Oh. Can you write some audio with
Some days I wish to be able to think stuff, right?
How about you? What do you like? Where at? I'm getting that with that. Yes. No, so, yeah, that's what we're doing. And then I took it out, and then I go over to the theater. I said, theater, don't give your parents a hard time. Go to the theater. You know, try to add another major, second major on the theater. Yeah, I did it. Try to. Try to learn something. To ease your parents. Salam, you already got it? You guys also see plays with your mom? I was Yeah, I had a big phone, but they catch a lot of people.
I'm going to use Sheikh Zaid Shakir's tactic of counting down. I'm going to give everyone 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Is there anybody sitting here? I just wanted to picture.
Our next speaker is Shaun King. Hailed by Time Magazine as one of the 25 most influential people on the internet, Shaun King is the CEO of the North Star, co-founder of the Real Justice PAC, a columnist for The Intercept, and the voice of social justice on the legendary Tom Joyner Morning Show. King's work brings striking clarity to the complicated picture of racism today. His is a new kind of advocacy. Using social media, he has bravely spearheaded efforts to identify white supremacists. His work has brought more of the violent supremacists who terrorized Charlottesville to justice than the FBI and state police combined. His social good campaigns have changed laws, unseated corrupt politicians, and elected promising new ones across the country. As a journalist, King has authored an astounding 1,500 articles on injustice since the start of the Black Lives Matter movement. We've entered a new civil rights movement, and King is one of the most powerful and compelling voices. We're honored to have him with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Shaun King.
Hello, everyone. So glad and so honored to be here with you. As everyone takes their seat, it's a deep honor for me to be here with you in this time. You know, when I was invited to be here, I had no idea that we would be dealing with such a horrible, traumatic situation in our world. And many of us tonight frequently asked each other how we were doing, and several of us immediately, as we do, your gut reaction is always to say, I'm okay. But I know many of us in the room are not okay, and I know our reaction to that question is always that we're okay. And you know, I think being in this country is always a complicated process of where we have to deal with trauma, but then also live our lives, and we're constantly going back between the things that we do in the world and processing these horrible moments of pain. And so I just want you to hear from me that I care deeply about, well, thank you. I care deeply about what's going on in our world and the pain and the trauma that it has caused. And tonight I want to teach a lesson, if I can, that I think may give some context and color for how we got here and where I think we may be going from here. Now, many of you told me just a few minutes ago that you follow me on social media. And so for some of you, this is actually like your first time seeing me in person. And so I actually do walk and talk and move. And but when all you know about somebody is what you see on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, you have an idea of who that person is or who they aren't, and it's often incomplete. And I don't get to talk so much about it, but my first job out of college, I went to college in Atlanta at Morehouse College. My first job was as a high school history and civics teacher. And I was 21 years old, teaching in inner city Atlanta, teaching middle school and high school history and civics. And when I was in college, my college degree was in history and African American studies, but I went through a teacher training program, and me and several of my brothers at Morehouse went out into the city and around the country and became teachers. And I find myself in this troubling time that we're in, I find myself really leaning on my training as a teacher. And so even as I am posting on social media, I don't say it, but I still see myself acting as a teacher. As I write articles for the companies and newspapers that I work for or start, in a lot of ways it's just an extension of my training as a teacher. And so for the next few minutes, I hope to actually teach you something, if that's all right. I know it's Sunday night and many of you haven't been to school in a long time, but we're gonna go to school tonight, and I hope to leave you with a lesson that sticks with you. Because as my brother Dr. Marc Lamont said, sometimes we see these horrible, senseless situations and struggle to make sense of them. A young woman came up to me just a few moments ago and said that her family had a personal connection to the beautiful young boy, the Somali boy who was shot and killed. Many of you have personal connections. These tragedies teach us very quickly how small the world really is. And many of you have personal connections to those who've lost their lives, who were murdered. And we try to make sense of something that's incredibly difficult to make sense of. Tonight, I don't know that I can make sense of this particular massacre, but I think that I can help give it some context. And I want to unpack how I think we got here and where we're going from here. In 2014, I actually lived here in California. My family and I were living in Southern California, and we had lived in Atlanta for almost 15 years, and all of our kids were born in the South. I grew up in the South, and I took this job as the director of communications at this environmental charity named Global Green. And it was a cushy job. My office was literally on the beach in Santa Monica, and I was doing something. I had started fundraising online, and for almost 15 years before I took that job, I had been developing my skills, sending out email newsletters, and so they recruited me and hired me for this position. And in the summer of 2014, I was really not doing the work that many of you know me for. I fought against police brutality and mass incarceration for years. For several years, I worked inside of jails and prisons all over Georgia. I was a traveling high school teacher at several different jails and youth detention centers in Atlanta. We had organized against police brutality for many years, but in 2014, I wasn't really doing that work. And I got a Facebook message from a buddy of mine that completely changed the entire trajectory of my life. there was a young man in New York named Ramsey Orta. And Ramsey was a part of a cop watch group that even exists here in the Bay that would regularly film videos of police brutality and just post them on YouTube to begin trying somehow to hold police officers accountable. Ramsey, in his own neighborhood, saw a horrible incident of police brutality in July of 2014 and had posted it to YouTube. And my buddy of mine followed that Cop Watch YouTube account, and he sent me a message on Facebook. I'm at my desk, I think it was July 17th of 2014, and I get this message, and my friend says, Shaun, there's a horrible video on Facebook. And he described what was in the video, and so much has changed. That was just 5 years ago, and it's hard for us to believe, but at that point in time, there had never been a viral video of someone being killed by police. We've now seen dozens and dozens of such videos that had never happened before. And so my friend sent this video, and he said, Shaun, there's a horrible video on YouTube, and a man is being harassed by police, and he's begging the police to leave him alone. And he said an officer comes up behind the man and begins choking the man and wrestles him to the ground, and you can hear the man yell out, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. He said, Shaun, they choked that man until he dies right there on the sidewalk. And many of you have probably had this moment where I'm at my, there's like a version of yourself that goes to the office, and there's a version of yourself outside of your office. And I'm at my office, and I don't know if I should even click on this link, because I don't know if the people who work with me at Global Green will understand what it is I'm looking at and why I'm looking at it. So I waited until most of my office mates went to lunch, and I clicked on that link, and I saw the video of the man that we later came to know as Eric Garner, literally breathing his last breath and dying on that sidewalk in Staten Island in New York. And I was so disturbed by it. Like many of us in the room, just as Mark said earlier, will remember the moment when we learned about New Zealand. All of us, we will remember that moment. That even for me, this moment where I saw this video of this man literally being executed on the sidewalk, it was a pivotal moment for my life that I never could have predicted. As I drove home, and if any of you have ever been in Southern California, we lived in Orange County, but I was working in Santa Monica. It took like 2 hours to drive home that day. As I drove home, I was racking my brain trying to figure out, what am I going to say or do about this horrible video that I saw? And the only thing that I could think to do was to post that video on my Facebook page. I didn't have a public page. I was not known as a public figure at the time. To just post that video on my personal Facebook page, with kind of a detailed description of what I thought happened in that video. And over the next few days, that video was shared all around the country and all around the world. About 3 weeks later, a buddy of mine who lived in St. Louis told me that there was a live stream video of a teenage boy who had just been shot and killed by police in a town called Ferguson, Missouri. I never even heard of Ferguson. And at that time, there was no Facebook Live, there was no Instagram Live, you couldn't go live on Twitter. There was a website literally called Livestream. And people were in the community streaming something that had just happened. And I clicked on that link and it was live. There was a body laying in the middle of the street. There was blood flowing, literally flowing down the street. But what struck me and what I could never shake and never forget was just the wails and the screams of the people, the family members who were hurt. It wasn't a protest. It was just distraught family members and friends and relatives trying to make sense of why their son, why their nephew, their grandson, their friend had been shot and was laying in the street for hours on end. The next day I learned that a young man in Ohio named John Crawford had been shot and killed by police. That same day in Los Angeles, we learned that a young brother named Ezell Ford was shot and killed by police. And in a span of about 3 weeks, the nation came to understand that the crisis of police brutality was much more robust than the headlines had really led on. Stories of police brutality in New York and Los Angeles were always told. We came to understand that it wasn't every 2 to 3 weeks that police were killing people in this country. It wasn't even every 2 to 3 days. It was every 6 or 7 hours. And at the time, the Washington Post and the Guardian had not yet developed these sophisticated databases that tracked it. And the Washington Post eventually won the Pulitzer Prize for developing. That tool didn't exist yet. And so as we learned about these incidents on Twitter, people all around the country, even right here, began organizing around this issue of police brutality. I left my job at Global Green to begin writing and documenting these stories of police violence all over the country. And then that November, we learned a story of a 12-year-old boy named Tamir Rice, who was literally playing just 2 blocks away from his mother's home over Thanksgiving break, was shot and killed by police. And simultaneously, all over the country, people were protesting and standing up for Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Ezell Ford, John Crawford, Tamir Rice, and others. And this phrase, Black Lives Matter, became really a household phrase all over the world. Not thousands, millions of people were tweeting it, Facebooking it, saying it, wearing it, marching with it. And I and many others threw my life into figuring out how do we fight for justice for these families. And I did something that I have since come to regret. I met many of these families. Over the course of 4 years, I probably sat at kitchen tables and dining room tables and in living rooms of several hundred families whose lives have been impacted by police brutality. And I sat with these families, and just as many of you are at these tables today, said to many of them, listen, don't worry, hang in there, we're going to get justice for your family. I remember getting on the phone with Tamir Rice's mother. Many of you in the room are parents who was still, she was still processing the reality that her son would no longer be coming home. And foolishly, I said to his mother, Samaria, listen. And I said it from a place of sincerity. Hang in there. Don't give up. We're going to get justice for your family. And there wasn't a single part of me that could even imagine that every single family we were fighting for would be denied justice. Not one of them. In fact, in 2014, nearly 1,200 people were killed by American police, and 0.00% of them ever got justice. None of them, not a single family. We began understanding that the systems and structures that we were fighting against were way more complex than we understood. And I showed up that January of 2015. I was in grad school getting a Master's of History degree. I showed up to grad school, and the professor had a picture of this hairy old white man on the screen. And I have to take you back in time to understand, even looking at this man's face got on my nerves. Because in November and December, really the bottom fell out for most of the families that we had been fighting for. In November and December of 2014, we learned that there would be no justice for any of those families. And for most of those families, when I say no justice, I don't mean that they would go to court and lose the case. There would be no charges. And in most of those cases, nobody would even lose their job. And I found myself in January of 2015, as many activists and organizers around the country did, I found myself in a position that many of you have found yourselves in. I found myself in a deep funk. At that time, I was too proud to get therapy or see a counselor, but I'm convinced that at that time I was probably in a serious depression because I had never fought so hard alongside so many people and gotten so little back in return. I grew up in rural Kentucky. My mother was a hard-working woman. She worked in a light bulb factory. I grew up with a single mother, and she would work sometimes 16 hours a day making light bulbs in this light bulb factory. And she had taught me, one of the main principles she taught me was that if I worked hard, there would always be a return for it, that you get out what you put in. And I remember thinking all throughout 2014, as thousands of people around the country fought full time for justice for those families, that our hard work would pay off. And each and every one of those families was denied justice. So when I showed up to my history course that spring, and the professor put this slide on the screen, I thought to myself, this is not remotely relevant for what I'm dealing with and what our people are dealing with. And many of you are current college students right now. You came up and spoke to me a few minutes ago. You've had that moment where you showed up to class and you were dealing with so much trauma in the world that school just felt irrelevant. Many of you might not be in school but are working a full-time job. When you go to work tomorrow with New Zealand on your heart, there'll be a part of you that feels like, why am I even here right now when stuff is so awful going on in the world? And I kid you not, I tried so hard to drop this class. And there's a thing called the add drop period, where you can drop a class and add something else. But I had waited too late, and like the only class that was left was like advanced badminton. And I thought to myself, who in the hell took badminton 1 and loved it so much that they needed badminton 2? And I'm not even joking. I clicked on badminton 2, advanced badminton, and it wouldn't even allow me to add it because I didn't have the prerequisite. And I was in such a place, and this is a true story. College students across the country that semester just dropped out. And many of them didn't even drop out, they just stopped showing up. And like they didn't even fill out the paperwork. The spring of 2015, college students who had poured their heart out in 2014, many of them just stopped showing up in 2015. And I made up in my mind, like, this is irrelevant. And I kid you not, the lesson that I learned in that class, which was the introduction to historiography, changed my life. And quickly, I'm going to share that lesson with you because it gave me a lens through which to see the world. I'm going to tell you a few stories and then teach a broader lesson about where we are and how we got here, and then we'll close for the night. This is Leopold von Ranke on the screen. And many people call Leopold von Ranke the father of the study of history. And he did not invent the field of history, and we've had historians for thousands and thousands of years but Leopold von Ranke created some of the first college degree programs in history. Many people believe that before von Ranke you couldn't get a bachelor's degree in history. But his greatest contribution was that he created, and this is a portrait of him in the mid-1800s, he created one of the first annotated timelines of human history. This is a slide of 10,000 people from throughout human history. Every time I look at this slide, I see somebody different. Like, I see Rerun from What's Happening on there right now, and there are only a few of you in the room who even know what that is. And so later you need to go and pull up YouTube and type Rerun, What's Happening Dance. You gotta type dance in there as well, and there's just a little treat there for you. But Leopold von Ranke began collecting thousands and thousands of stories of every hero, every villain, every politician, every warlord, every inventor, every creator, every artist, every musician, every inventor, every elected official. And I don't mean over a period of months or even years, but over the period of 3 decades, he began assembling thousands and thousands of stories from throughout world history. And he expected that he would find something, and it's in this thing that I want to teach the lesson. Von Ranke expected that when he put all of human history, when he put all of these stories in chronological order, what von Ranke expected to see is that over time, humanity would be getting better and better and better. Let me see. I'm a mover, so let me put on this. I'm gonna move with this wireless mic for a second, all right? Test, there we go. I was a Baptist preacher for about 15 years, and so I'm a mover, all right? Von Ranke expected that when he put, you see this green dot? If you imagine for a moment that this right here, these are the early humans. And imagine right here that this is us today. Von Ranke expected that when he put human history in when he put all of these stories in chronological order, he expected that over time, he would find that humanity was getting better and better and better and better and better. At the same time as Leopold von Ranke, there was another scholar named Charles Darwin, who was working on the science of it. And many of you have heard the theories of Charles Darwin. And Charles Darwin also believed that over time, it would show that humanity was progressing in an upward trajectory. And what von Ranke believed was that when he put these stories in chronological order, that it would show human beings getting better and better and better. But when he actually put it in order, this is just an example of a timeline of the history of London. When von Ranke finally put history in chronological order, put the stories of people, what he found was that it didn't look like this. Human beings were not getting better and better and better. When he put it in chronological order, it looked like this. Von Ranke found that sometimes human beings were amazing. And I know, listen, in the era that we're in, it's hard to believe a time where human beings, by and large, got along. And I'm not just talking about a mythical Garden of Eden type of getting along. Like, he found hundreds of years of human history where there was very little war, very little famine, where by and large people respected borders and boundaries. He found hundreds of years of human history where there were no prisons, no jails. He found hundreds of years of human history where there were no borders and boundaries, where people literally just found ways to get along. And then all of a sudden, humanity would be amazing, and then it would crash to depths that were so ugly and so destructive that it was unthinkable. And that human beings would scratch and claw themselves out of the holes that they found themselves in and barely get their head above water, only to plummet somewhere ugly again. And what von Ranke found was that human beings did not operate like this. In fact, what he found was that he had confused the steady improvement of technology with the steady improvement of humanity. In fact, when he looked over human history, he said this could be 10,000 years, this could be 1,000 years, it could be 100, it could be 10 years, and that humanity was always getting better. We had just moved to Southern California, and I had dropped my teenage daughter off at middle school. And we had just gotten her first cell phone. And I parked my car, and she got out of the car, and I rolled down my window. And she got ready to walk away, and I put the window down. I said, hold on. I said, if you need anything, call me. And I kid you not, my daughter looked me right in the face, and she was like, I thought she was joking, she was dead serious. She said, Dad, I'll call you, but why are you putting a banana on the side of your face when you say it? And when she first said it, I looked at her, and my mind could not compute what she was saying. And she said, Dad, I'll call you, but I don't even know why you're doing this thing with your thumb and your pinky. And I realized that in her entire 12 years on Earth, she had never seen a phone look like this. And that for literally the first half of my life, this is what telephones look like. When I explained to my kids that we used to have one phone in the whole house, and that it was stuck on the wall of my mother's kitchen, and it had a long curly cord attached to it, they couldn't believe it. Because for most of her life, a phone was a square box. Because over time, technology is getting better and better and better. It changes. I explained to my kids that when their mother and I were dating, and I'm 39, but I've been with my wife since we were 15 and 16 years old. If you had two, that you could be on one phone and somebody could lift up the other phone and secretly on the low listen to your conversation. And you would have to live in a house with a black mother, because black mothers are notorious for listening to all their daughters' conversations. And her mother, who I love and who now loves me but did not love me so much when we were teenagers, her mother would sit on the phone for minutes and minutes and minutes and wait until the conversation got a little spicy and then say, hey, I'm on the phone. And I tried to explain this technology to my kids, and they could not make sense of it. That you could pick up one phone in the house and listen to another phone in the house. Because over time, it doesn't matter if it's 100 years or 10 years, Von Ranke explained the history of transportation, the history of medicine. And what Von Ranke understood was actually a painful realization, is that over time, our technology gets better, but the human beings don't. Sometimes, listen, sometimes human beings do get better, and sometimes they get drastically worse. Now, if you look at this illustration, there's one thing everywhere I speak, and I've taught this workshop all over the country. In deep conservative states, I've traveled now to 43 states around the country. And no matter where I go, we can all agree on this. I know one thing. I know we're not here. I know we're not here. All I know is that we're somewhere down here. I know for sure that we are not at one of the peaks of humanity's best time. It can't be true. I can't say for sure if I don't know. My gut tells me that we're not here at this low point or here at this low point. My gut tells me that we are somewhere here and going down. Now, one of the things that I've come to understand is that it's hard to know where in human history you are when you're just living in it. But do you know that what just happened in New Zealand is the deadliest hate crime against Muslims in modern world history? Do you know when the deadliest hate crime against African Americans in the past 95 years took place? Does anybody know? It's when Dylann Roof, the deadliest hate crime against African Americans in 95 years, did not take place in the 40s, did not take place during the Civil Rights Movement, did not take place in the 50s or 60s. The deadliest hate crime against African Americans in any of our life, unless there's someone in this room older than 95, the deadliest hate crime against African Americans in your lifetime took place in 2015, when Dylann Roof walked into a church in Charleston and shot and killed the pastor and 8 other people. Do you know when the deadliest hate crime ever in the history of the United States against Jewish people was? Do you know? It was 3 months ago. The deadliest hate crime against Jews in America took place at the Tree of Life Synagogue. I need you to understand, because it's hard to know where you are in human history when you're just living in it. Because when human history unfolds, it doesn't feel like the history books. Because the history books go from crisis to crisis, event to event, but real life doesn't feel like that. Like tonight, you have to go, you have to take off these clothes, you have to prepare for tomorrow. Tomorrow you have to go to work, you have to go to school. And so in between all of the horrible moments of real life are these horrible traumatic moments. The Washington Post will probably win another Pulitzer Prize for their tracker of Donald Trump's lies. I don't say this even to be political. He just crossed, just in his presidency, 10,000 lies. And the people who manage that tracker are conservative and liberal. It's not a partisan tracker. And they literally have said that they've left off thousands of things that could be disputed. Several experts in world history said they do not believe a single public figure lied more in their lifetime than he has lied in his presidency. That's disturbing. He had a speech that he gave the day before the previous midterms, and in the speech, he told 125 lies in a single speech. Here's what I know. Oh, I almost knocked that water over. Here's what I know. We're not here, we're not here, we're somewhere down here. Thank you, brother, appreciate it. If this is how history unfolds, if we're getting better and better and better and better over time, if these are the early humans and this is us today, and we're getting better and better and better and better, that would mean Donald Trump is peak humanity. I don't even believe Melania believes Donald Trump is peak humanity. Because I keep seeing videos of her slapping his hand away and giving him side-eye, and I'm not a defender of Melania, but I definitely don't believe she believes Donald Trump is peak humanity. That's an arranged situation that I can't quite wrap my mind around. If we're getting better and better and better over time, how do we explain this? Does anybody know what this is? It's a slave ship, yes. You can actually see this physical document. And I lived in California for many years. California's like another country. Did you know there's a place in this country called Washington, D.C.? It's on the other side. And if you ever get a chance to go there, there's a museum of African American history and culture. And this actual physical document is on the wall. This is a business plan. It literally was a document created by an entrepreneur who was looking for financing for his business. And his business was shipping human beings. If we're getting better and better and better, how do we explain that less than 200 years ago, people were in the business of shipping human beings all around the world? Because let me break it down. If this is all of human history, and this is early humanity, and this is us now, this right here, this took place about right here. If this is all of human history, the transatlantic slave trade took place in the last part of this last bar of the graph. If we're getting better and better over time, how do we explain the wounds on this man's back? If we're getting better and better over time, if this is how time unfolds, how do we explain this? If we're getting better and better over time, how do we explain the Holocaust? I live in Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, we have the largest living number of survivors of the Holocaust of any city outside of Israel. People who survived this are still alive. And if we're getting better and better and better, how do we explain this? This is at Auschwitz, where thousands and thousands and thousands of shoes that were taken off of people's feet are still there. All the bodies perished, but the shoes are still there. If we're getting better and better over time, if this is how time unfolds, how do we explain Rwandan genocide? How do we, to this day, they continue to find skulls and fragments of skulls throughout Rwanda, and they treat them as sacred objects because for some communities, that was all that was left. This was when I was in high school. We explain this because technology may unfold like this, but humanity doesn't. Humanity unfolds like this. And I believe we are in a dip in the quality of our humanity. And New Zealand proves that. Now, you may have heard Donald Trump literally used many of the same words just this week that the man who committed this atrocity used in his own manifesto. But it does something disturbing that I want to caution us of. Many of us believe that we will work ourselves out of the dip we find ourselves in if we defeat Donald Trump. But I need you to understand that Donald Trump is both a symptom and a cause of the dip we find ourselves in. He was elected because we were already down here. Now, he keeps us down there. He takes us deeper into the dip, but defeating him doesn't change it. Let me push it. If we're getting better and better and better, how do we explain this? This is the United States state and federal prison population. About 25% of these people are in California. And we're in California under Democratic administrations, just to be clear. And if we're getting better and better over time, how do we explain this explosion in incarceration? Or how do we explain this? This is the international rate of imprisonment, where the United States not only has the largest number of people in prison, but imprisons more people per capita than any country in the world. And do you see who's number two? Rwanda. Why is Rwanda number two? Because they just emerged from genocide. So the number one country is the United States, and the number two country is a country that just emerged from genocide. What does that tell us?
We haven't dealt with our genocide.
Right. Yeah, the United States has not addressed the soul and the core of its problem. And we break this down and understand it because technology may work like this, but we are in a dip in the quality of our humanity. Let me close with 3 thoughts about this dip. The first thing that worries me is that dips are easy to get into
but really hard to get out of. The second thing that concerns me about the dip that we're in right now is that dips can last for months, they can last for years, but some dips last for generations. If we go back and think of the transatlantic slave trade as a dip, that's a dip that lasted for between 300 and 400 years. And here's the last thing, and it's a point of hope. No dip is permanent, but you never accidentally find yourself out of it. As a kid, there was this park we used to ride our bikes in called Big Spring Park. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky, and you would ride your bike down this hill, and you would go so fast down the hill that if you hit a pebble or a twig or anything, you would wreck. What was awesome was going down the hill, but you had to go up an equal size hill once you went down that hill. And you could not, no matter how bad you tried, you could not ride your bike out of the hill. You had to always push it up. Here's what I know. We could stay here for a few more years. We could stay here for a few more generations, but we will stay here until we push ourselves out. I know that we're not here, and I damn sure know we're not here. I don't know if we're here going down, if we're here on our way up. But what I know is how you live your life in the dip should not be how you live your life here or here. I'll close with this. I don't think a single one of us in the room think what happened in New Zealand was the last time we're going to see that. I don't even think I've heard anybody suggest such a thing. I don't think I've heard a single person say, glad that'll never happen again. We are pretty much expecting it to happen. It's a matter of when, where, and who. And it was just unpacked a few minutes ago. The man who did that could have chosen anywhere. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about this global system of white supremacy, capitalism, and power. Where we are, we have to organize ourselves out of. And there's no battle that we're facing that we can't organize against and in front of. What I love about this center and love about your support of it is that it provides the intellectual hub for how we fight Islamophobia. It provides the substantive structure, statistics, and information that guides policies. Did you hear Dr. Hatem say that nations are using this center's definition on Islamophobia? Do you know how powerful that is? To create the definition of the problem, because you can't solve what you can't define. I want to encourage all of you, even if you turned in an envelope, to put the process of change, the act of change, fighting for change, to put that in your budget. Because what I know is getting out of this dip will be expensive. And the people who are determined to keep us in that dip are investing in keeping us there with every dime and dollar they have. Now, I don't know if there was actually somebody who could have raised their hand when we said $50,000. But what I do hope is that you put this center in your monthly budget. It may be $25, it may be $50. But if everybody in this room makes a monthly contribution to the center, they will not only be able to hire the staff they need, but the reach of the work of this center will grow exponentially. Because what they've been able to do on what is in essence a shoestring budget blows my mind. I don't know of any other center in America that has done more with less than this one. It's a compliment to its founder and its leaders, a compliment to you that are here that believe in it. Because we need tools to be able to fight our way out of it. Listen, I believe we will fight our way and organize our way out of the dip, but it's going to take all of us playing our part, playing our role to be able to do it. I hope to be there with you. I have your back. I support you and believe in you. God bless you.
Assalamu alaikum. So, just to give you a report of what you raised, we raised so far $200,000. We're still having some cash coming in, so actually the last was 2,456. So really very positive. You still can donate. We could make a 50,000 easily if everyone just could donate $100. We have about 500 or 400 people. That's an easy way to get us into the 250. But as you go out, if that's something that you could do, it'll be very positive. We're still dedicated to continue to do the research. This is a long-term struggle. It did not start yesterday or the day before. You could go all the way back to 1492 with the Inquisition. And I actually wrote a piece that says, does Europe have an Inquisition problem? Because during the Inquisition, Muslims could not dress with their outfit, Muslims and Jews. You could not actually dress in your garb. You had to open your windows and doors because you could not take a spiritual bath or ghusl before Friday or Saturday for Jews and Muslims. Mosques were converted to churches in Granada and Cordoba. The libraries were burned. And then my students who go with us to Granada, usually we take them to the Inquisition Museum. And on the third floor of the Inquisition Museum, there is the waterboarding station. Some actually wrote when the US began to use waterboarding, that waterboarding came during World War II. It's actually incorrect. Waterboarding was used against Muslims and Jews during the Inquisition period in Europe. You go on the third floor, the station, the waterboarding station is present in there. And the Inquisition was a 400-year experience. So today in many parts of Europe, there's restrictions on Muslims dressed in Muslim garb. The hijab is, at least in France, you had the restrictions on the use of a hijab, calling it as ostentatious display of religious symbolism. The organization of time in Western society is ostentatious display of religious symbolism, because people go they don't go to work or do anything on Friday, on Saturday and Sunday. That's religious time. You take holiday December 23rd and you come back January 1st and 2nd. I know we celebrate Jesus' birthday, peace be upon him, but to say that France or the United States or UK and Europe is not engaging in ostentatious display of religious symbolism is a fool's gold that actually trying to speak to us while realizing that the minority religions are subsidizing the majority religion ostentatious display of religious symbolism. And I argue if the French wants to have equality, they should be buying Chanel hijab to all the Muslim women in France as an expression of gratitude, because we're subsidizing Europe's religious celebration. I want you to continue to celebrate, but at least every time you send a greeting card from Macron or any of the presidents or the prime ministers and so on in France, and you say holiday greetings and Merry Christmas, you should thank a Muslim, a Sikh, a Jew, or anyone in France that is subsidizing your religious display of ostentatious religious symbolism and you're taking so many days off. This is not to, again, boast about religions, but just to understand how Islamophobia is being used as a way to have a discourse that is completely doesn't really match the reality. I'm going to end with the following, and I think it's very important for us to know. In France, and I think we have our French guests, both Hamza and Aisha. If you go to France, there is the Great Mosque, the Grand Mosque of Paris. In the First World War, there were a large number of Muslims who fought on the side of the French army. Again, we're not going to critique, that was colonial period. After the war, the French wanted to express gratitude to the Muslims who fought. So they built the Grand Mosque in Paris on the cost of the French government, and they brought architects from North Africa to build it. First World War I. In World War II, the Imam of the mosque, Abdul Qadir bin Taghrib, the Imam of the Grand Mosque of Paris, he actually hid 700 to possibly 1,000 Jews under the mosque and in the tunnel of the mosque, and he gave them ID cards that they're Muslims. So when the French government, the Vichy government, which cooperated with the Nazis, they were going around and picking up the Jews in France, the French, right, with their croissant and latte and all that, right? They were picking the Jews and delivering them to the Nazi Germany. At that time, the Imam of the mosque was hiding Jews and giving them certificate that they're Muslims. One of the most famous singers in France at the time was a Jewish person. He came to the Imam because the Nazi forces were after him. He came and asked for a certificate that he is a Muslim, and the Imam gave him a certificate that he's a Muslim. But not only that, the Imam asked his assistant to go to the graveyard and take one of the headstones of the graveyard, erase the name of the Muslim in there, and put the father of this singer on it, because he knew that if the Nazis arrested him, they will try to ask for other evidence. And sure enough, they arrested him, and they came and said, no, I'm a Muslim. No, you're not a Muslim. No, I'm Muslim. My father is buried there in the cemetery. So the German army went to the cemetery, and sure enough, the headstone with his father's name is written there, which was what the Imam actually has done. So you go to the mosque, actually, the Imam is buried right there in the courtyard of the mosque, and every year the French government does a ceremony to honor him. So when the French say who represent liberal French values, I would say that the Muslims who hid the Jews and protected them during the Second World War were representing the values, and the French today of Marie Le Pen and her father, who are neo-Nazi party, her father actually is a neo-Nazi who collects Nazi memorabilia. That's the sick person. She goes around and talks about how the Muslims don't belong in France. We need to send back these people to where they belong. They belong in the dustbin of history, and our work, what needs to be done accordingly. Because that's what you're having. The only country in Europe during Second World War, again, know your facts, know your history, the only country in Europe during the Second War that the Jewish population increased during the Second War was Albania, a Muslim country. So don't talk to us about values, liberal values, democracy, because when head came to shove, when a person was putting their life, whether it's the Imam in Paris or Albania, they stood and protected Jews. And you also could speak about the Muslims of Morocco. The king of Morocco refused the German army and the Hitler Germany because they wanted to actually ask the Jews of Morocco to wear the insignia. He refused. He said, these are my subjects, these are my citizens, I will not allow them to actually wear the insignia. That's Morocco. So don't let people try to sell you a whole heap of garbage because all of a sudden they woke up and they think the KKK represent patriotism. They represent nothing but the dustbin of history, and that's the work that we need to do in order to reclaim and exactly assert what the values that our society and the universal values, what's all about. If you don't know your history, people will sell you a whole bunch of garbage, and this is what we're dealing with in this country and across the world, because people are assuming that we are not people that understand how history is made and what our contribution, both in the past as well in the present. So, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you, and look forward to your contribution.